everyone, my name is Elena Urioste. I'm a violinist and I am coming to you from the first ever virtual Benedetti sessions. I want to confess that this is my very first online violin tutorial, so please bear with me as I figure out the ropes. I thought what I would do for these sessions is just break the music down that we're working on into sections and kind of go through it and explain what I perceive the challenges to be in the music. If you don't find something challenging or if other challenges arise, please reach out to me, write to me, let me know what you'd like to work on, what is plaguing you, and hopefully we can make some progress together. So for this Tchaikovsky tutorial, we're focusing on the last movement, of course. I thought I would start this lesson by doing the first 2 pages. My edition is from IMSLP. But I think that most editions are probably broken into 6 pages for the second violins for the last movement. So I'm just going to go through kind of line by line or section by section and chat about some of the things that I find tricky or ideas that I have or stuff to look out for, that sort of thing. So I'm sure you know this already, but it bears mentioning. The second violins and violas start this last movement. So we really have to be assertive. We establish the tempo, the vibe, the character, everything. It's all up to us. So we really have to be assertive at the beginning. So to start, we're poised, we're ready. We have to give a good cue. And this involves breathing. So something like this maybe. So we want to breathe for sure. We might want to conduct a little bit, especially if we're far apart from each other on the stage or around the world. So let's try that. I'm going to conduct 1 and, something like that. All right, now the next challenge, for me at least, is these triplets, coordinating the string crossings. I've always had a hard time making sure that my triplets are even, so let's break it down a little bit. Sometimes, well, a lot of the time, I like to separate the 2 hands, at least in my mind, so that I have a way of better organizing it. So obviously, left hand isn't too challenging for these first, what is it, almost 12 bars, excuse me. We put the 3 down, or however you're playing your top D, but it's the bow that's tricky. It's going... So I really think of it as A, D, A, A, D, A, A, D, A, A, D, A, and I might practice it slower, of course, with little tiny accents to start off with so that I can really feel the bow change. Down, up, down. And I make sure to keep my string crossings really, really tight, really close, so not too much motion. We don't want to use any excessive motions. I'm all about economy of motion, meaning doing as little as possible to achieve the best result. Yeah, just thinking of what's the simplest or most concise way that I can do things. So when practicing this, I would also use a really tiny amount of bow, really sticky, really gluey, so that I can feel the contact of my bow to the string. And then gradually I would work that up to a bit faster. And eventually use a little bit more bow or maybe play it closer to the tip. You can experiment with these things, see what works for you. And even though it doesn't say so, I would think, at least in my mind, about putting those little accents that we talked about over the fronts of each bow. Because even though it is legato, it is slurred, we're really the motor along with the violas before the firsts come in with the... So we have to keep it as exciting and sparkly as possible. Right? Okay, So moving on, that goes on for quite a while. Then we get to so what are the challenges here? A lot. I would say finding a stroke that's really crisp, that's controlled, yet, I'll use the word sparkly again, it should really be lively, doing this motion. Hopefully you know what this means. And then for me, something that's really challenging is the dynamics. Really making sure to delineate between the forte on the first three notes of that figure, and then piano, forte, piano, and then it goes back and forth. So let's break it down so that it's really slowly. Oops. So a couple things to look out for. When I practice, I find I like to think of things as little blocks. So blocks of activity, then a space, then the block of the next activity. So if that doesn't quite make sense, I'll explain it. Blocks can be super duper tiny, like that's one block. That's one block. Something like that. So the way my brain works, I like to work on the block. So even if it's just make sure the block is really solid. Then the space between, take as much time as you need to prepare yourself for the next block, and then do the next block. So so then when you increase the speed, you're not only getting faster in the actual material, but you're shortening the spaces between each block. So I'll give you an example, or I'll act that out. So hopefully that was clear. So I'm not only increasing the speed of the notes, but the spaces between each little section is getting smaller, and that contributes to an overall sense of progress and sense of control. I guess this stroke bears talking about. In general, I find staccato or spiccato or anything with a dot over it that seems like it should be off the string, I like to think of as always, always, always coming from the string. So I might practice something like this also. Really gluey again. So that every note has quality, has tone, and it's not just, we're dropping our bow and kind of slapping it on the string. We're really, it's like this motion, but with the hair. Sorry, that wasn't a good example. I'm going to do that again. So we're never just, because we're not the top line, since we're playing the second violins, we're not just phoning it in, thinking of it as accompaniment. We're another voice, and we really want to hear the contours of the line. Oops. So I'm going to go through this line a little bit under tempo, sometimes pausing in between the blocks, and really trying to make a beautiful line above all else. All right, so I I think we should try practicing really making these sharp changes between forte piano. But in the end, we can't get too hung up on it. I think we should try our best. But in general, I think it's like a hairpin down indication. So I think he just doesn't want us to whack the longer note. I realize I'm going to have to start learning the British terminology for, I guess that would be a dotted crotchet. Dotted quarter note, dotted crotchet, I think. Anyway, my point is that these gestures we're backing away from them. We're never going towards the main note. So I'll do that phrase one more time and then go on finally to our little melody. Yay! Obviously, this is not metronomic. The metronome can also be of service once you've practiced in blocks like this, but I admit that my rhythm is a little bit, I'm just trying to show all of the different parts of the phrase, so it might not be totally in rhythm at the moment. I'm just so you're aware that I'm aware. So now, finally, the fun part. Yay! And the violins, first violins are just, they're accompanying us now, of course, helping us, supporting us, but we're the main event. So it's important to be really crisp, really articulate. The bowing that I am doing now, I think we decided on this with Nikki in a previous live session. If something else works for you, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this. I'm not very strict about bowing, so if you find something that sounds as good or similar or better, go for it. The bowing that I find is quite effective is, so down, up, down, always an up on this note. Up, 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 and same here. Up, down, up, 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 so that the dotted notes are always lifted. I actually feel like this melody, the stuff we've had before, is much more difficult, so in some ways this feels like a relief. But I would say the same principles apply of playing really compact, really sparkly. Make sure the left hand is every bit as articulate as the right hand. I think I mentioned before I like to separate the hands sometimes, so this is a nice passage to see if you can hear the plunk of your fingers. I'll go from the second phrase and go on, because I now realize that I'm just yammering on and on. Now another good section to practice in blocks. Right? So sort of same principle as before. There's a lot of quick changes between dynamics, so it can be really helpful to practice one dynamic, pause, everything in the next dynamic, still phrasing, still contouring, pause, etc. So moving on, we have our first, I guess this would be the second theme. So we come in with our accompanying figure, and even though it says, sorry, I was just thinking about the fact that that was not at all the correct pitch, which is weird because I'm supposed to have perfect pitch, but I just totally forgot what the correct pitches were. Anyway, when we come in at our entrance here, this is the fifth of B. It says fortissimo. However, I think it still needs lightness and what's the word? Just like an internal energy rather than we don't have to play as loud as possible. So again, really compact bow, sticky, and then just let it go. I would practice a passage like this. Really gluey almost. And work it up in tempo. And then I would just loosen my right wrist. Really let it fly. And then it's our moment. Now, I think in this whole section, it's really important to continue making a line as though it were all slurred, as though it were legato. Really beautiful. I think when we see a bunch of accents and fast notes, there's a tendency to just kind of go into a bit more autopilot mode. So I think as much as we can practice, what's that saying? Practice slow. No, that's old and new, but I think it applies here. Practice slow music like it's fast and fast music like it's slow. Also works for old and new, I think. So I might practice this with that gluey feeling in the bow. So that everything really has shape and line. What was I going to say? Oh, yes. When in doubt, if you ever get stuck with phrasing, this might be way too simplistic, but it's a technique that I use in a pinch. Just follow the shape, the physical shape on the page of the line. It certainly works for a phrase like this. And of course, consult the score, know exactly when you're the primary voice and not. It's really just for the first few measures. Certainly this. And then the next voice comes in. So then it's a good chance to back away. But then in this supporting role, be every bit as musical and follow the line and contour it and shape and do different strokes, all the things. Oopsie. Well, now that I've messed it up so many times, let's talk about this phrase. This gets quite complicated with the string crossings. So definitely a good place to unpack, know which string you're on. Sometimes it helps me if I stare at my bow to make sure I'm doing all the string crossings compactly and concisely. This would be the time, now that I've messed it up 3 times, to write in a fingering. I don't have a pencil. I'm a bad musician, but I'm making a mental fingering. That's a 0. I feel like I think, and I know that Nikki would agree, mistakes are fine. They're welcome because it means you're trying something. However, when you've made the same mistake over and over, then it's maybe time to examine, well, what is it, a physical thing that's getting in the way? Am I not really mentally engaged? Would a simple reminder by, marking something in be helpful? I think the third option is what I should do. I'm going to bring my pencil next time, promise. So, but anyway, my general point for that section was, from a technical standpoint, let's make it as concise as possible. From a musical standpoint, let's make it as legato and just really phrased, really shapes, follow the peaks and valleys of the line. So, I'm talking so much. So now we go into a section that's not really about us. We are providing a little salt and pepper over a beautiful soaring melody. And but our job again is to support and make the melody sound even better and more impressive. So a couple bars before this upcoming double bar. I think I'm under tempo. But throughout this whole upcoming section, there are dots, but I think this dot doesn't always mean, really bouncy. I think this is much more lilting, more brushy. So while the violins are blah, 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 we just need to kind of brush, tickle the string, and provide like a nice rocking, lilting sensation for them to float over. And I think in sections like these and accompaniments, it's important to bring out the harmonic changes, the note changes, the things that are different, because the audience wants to hear the new things, the interesting things. And when it's the same for a few measures, that you can sort of let go a little bit more. And now even quieter. Crescendo. And now we join. Sorry, I'm being lazy and only playing the top line. But it's like this motor, these quicker notes have worked us into a frenzy, and we have to join our friends. Back to secondary roll. Right, so then here, this is the time for us to really blossom, use the bow, use the left hand, all that like gluey, sticky motions that we've been doing into the string. Now we can just go horizontal and really let it fly. Going on from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 before letter D. Now here we have to look at our friends on the video if you're playing for a video, or if you're not playing to a video. This is one of those moments where we just have to commune with the other people that we're playing with. Pick up on signals, breathe together, eye contact, and hopefully someone will give a cue on the downbeat of the triple F. Here, this can be quite chaotic because there's a lot going on. We're playing all these 3 and 4 note chords. Again, I think I practice most things. I start small. I start in the string, compact, and then open up. So to break this phrase down, I would probably hope my E string behaves. another great place to separate the hands. The bow shouldn't move until the left hand is there. So let's really make sure that the left hand is always set for these chords. As you play the A, get the G major chord ready. Put them down. So as you're playing the B flat, so we don't have to go. I'm gonna break that painting. Yes, so have the chords set before the bow comes to play them. And a little cheat, if I have never been very good at fifths, or if fifths are a challenge for you, certainly on these downbeats, I think you can roll to the top note fairly quickly. So one more time and then I'll go on. Oop, I lied. Watch. Watch again. These rests are a time for the whole ensemble to breathe together, collect yourselves, and then go on. Long line. All the way to here. And then you're with the firsts here. Back to small and articulate. Left hand articulation. All right, so that is the first 2 pages of the Tchaikovsky. I know that was a lot of information, insight into my brain and the way I break things down to practice. If that didn't cover any of the challenges that any of you would like to discuss, please feel free to reach out to me or to the foundation. And obviously, a lot of the things that I talked about, practicing in a compact way, separating the hands, can be applied to all of this music and really all of any music, but certainly in this piece. So feel free to work on the whole movement like this. But for the next section, I will touch upon the next 2 pages, which includes the very tricky fugue. So that will be fun. And in the meantime, please feel free to write with any questions, as I said. If you'd like to tag your practice videos with the Benedetti sessions or practice with Elena, you're welcome to do so. I'm just going to check my notes to see whether there was anything else I was supposed to mention to you. Stand by. Please continue to reference, consult, and work with your own teachers if you have the possibility. I hope you've had a look at our warm-up videos. If you haven't, there's tons to choose from, all really different and exciting. So definitely look at the warm-up videos and warm up every day properly before you start to play. I know this is a lot of work that you're doing, so we want to make sure you're set up properly each day. And that was lovely. I hope that was instructive, clear, and if not, please let me know, and see you again next week.